Welcome back to episode 7. And we're here with a friend of mine, David. Essentially, to give a bit of a background, a family friend's uncle is David in reference to me. And whenever we get together, we always have very deep conversations. And I love the way you think, and I love the way your story of how those thoughts developed. So I just thought we could come on for people, whoever's listening, Costin's sake, and we could just have a conversation about everything we chat about in those instances, because I just love the way you think. So we'll start a bit, David, about your background and how you came to Australia and whatnot.
All right, it's a bit of a story. Thank you very much. I feel quite flattered, for your words. Thank you for having me. Of course,
David.
Well, my story, in regards to Australia, starts in 2003 when I did the Camino de Santiago, which is a pilgrimage, as I'm sure many people know, along the north of Spain. That's where I met my wife, Silvana, and the reason that I am here in Australia.
Mm.
So everything started with a journey, so to say, and that journey started that day on the Camino in 2003, but somehow, it hasn't finished. I'm still on that journey, living 15,000 kilometers away from that very moment,
Yeah.
And yeah, well, it has been a little bit of a journey in every sense. I came to Australia for the first time 2005. I stayed for the period, that they allow you with the holiday visa. That was a bit less than a year, and then Silvana and I took off to Europe to try to accumulate that time for the visa, for the de facto papers, to make sure that I could come back, with everything legal and sorted, and we stayed for about 2.5 years, in which we traveled quite a lot, which is one of the things that I like to do the most, and one of the things that I talk to you, Thailand, quite often, I keep saying, that this is quite a nice school, in life.
When you finished school, you started traveling straight after school, didn't you?
Well, it was a bit of a journey from that point onwards too, because in answer to that question, that many people made, what you want to be when you grow up, I grew up, and I didn't know still, so it was quite confusing, to try to choose something, and dedicate my life and all my input into something that I didn't know that it was clear. At the same time, I was doing sport, and I was doing quite well, I was doing athletics, in short put for about 8 years, and I was mixing, the studying, the high school, with the training, and around 18 years old, I thought that I needed to break down, with all the expectations, that they were upon me, and look a little bit inwards, and see what it is that I wanted, and what I wanted, was to see the world, so I took off for my first journey to London when I was 18. It was quite shocking, coming from a very small place in Spain, like I do.
Yeah.
But it was very interesting. It opened my mind, in many different ways,
What?
How long did you travel for?
This first trip that I did to London, it lasted for about a year. It was very young, it was very rich and full of experiences, a lot of mistakes too,
A lot of beers?
Time, more than regretting, I tried to learn from them, and just use that information, to try to keep going in the right direction now, but it was quite full on. It was quite full on because I come from a small place, and I knew I needed to break through and go somewhere new, but just moving to such a big town like London, was quite shocking,
Yeah.
But very fun too, at that age.
Where are you
London.
from? What was the name? Yeah, fuck
Sorry?
yeah. Where are you from? What's the name of your town? It's near Madrid, isn't it?
No, it's not. It's a small town called Leon. It's
Yeah,
in the
I
north
thought
of
it was
Spain.
that because I remember you telling me, but I forgot. I didn't want to say it if it was wrong.
Yeah, and the thing is that the Leon is right in the Camino, So basically, when I did the Camino, what I was saying before, I started from my house, So it was right in the middle. It seems like life was going at a pace, in which everything, worked out, for Silvana to be at the right place in the right moment,
Yeah.
And and then all that successions of events, from that moment,
What's the Camino? I don't know what that is.
The Camino is a pilgrimage, which is most famously known, to be one of the three main Catholic pilgrimages in the world, along with the one to the Vatican and the other one to Jerusalem, and this one goes to Santiago and it crosses the north part of Spain, through many different places, and it's also very ancient route, that it was used commercially and in order to get to the end of the earth, at the time we didn't know that the earth wasn't flat. Some people think it was flat,
So are you really religious?
No, I didn't do it for religious purposes, but in regards, to if I am religious, I think I learned how to be religious, but when somebody asks me about religion, which is my religion, I tend to answer, that it's only good to me. I think it's an inner work, that is required, by each one of us, and you can either decide, to go with something, that it resonates with you, or you can look inward, and try to make your own rituals, make your own prayers, something that it works for you, that it helps you to communicate, with that beyond sort of thing.
I think you're very spiritual is what I'd describe from knowing you, as opposed to religious, if that is anything.
Yeah.
But
I understand, spirituality and religion, as well, all that we have built up as humans beings, in order, to not suffocate with the fears of who we are, where we come from, and all these metaphysical questions, So there is a part of spirituality, I think we call it that, because we don't know how to call it better, but definitely it is something, part of our world that is tangible and we can touch and we can interact, and there is some other, that is as real, but you cannot touch, you cannot feel, and I do believe in that, I do believe that is very important. I think it's that part of looking inward, as a person, what it brings as the spirituality, because it helps you to connect.
How did you find it at the beginning? That spirituality.
How did I find it? Confusing, because it usually tends to be imposed, by the society that you grow up,
Yeah.
So in my case, was Catholic, Catholic church, and let's say, that it never was very bothersome, I mean, I witnessed things, with teachers, that they were preaching one thing, and then doing some other things, that they caught my attention, and start to look a little bit beyond into that lie, because at the end of the day, it's a human construction, So yeah, it's full of hypocrisy, sort of saying, So it kind of make me look somewhere else, and I always been very curious, in regards to other cultures, other religions, and ways to understand life. So,
but to have the balls to go off on your own, I like, what's the difference? What do you think? There's something different about you compared to other people? Like, the thing I try to understand is what sets people apart for the people that are afraid to do that and the people that do that, or the people that don't want to do that and the people that do that.
Yeah, like Talon and I would never have gone straight from school
because there's no security
and just traveled or just seeing what happened.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I know, and the mentality, and probably the sensible thing to do is to do it the way you guys have done it, I just, at that time, I found myself, in a crossways, and at that time, I decided, that nothing was so clear for me, to invest that amount of time and effort, and on the other hand, I have the whole world, to go to, So
it seemed like it worked out pretty well.
What's that? Sorry?
It worked out pretty well from the sounds of it.
Yeah, but in different order, So in this life, there are certain things, that they need to be covered, and in my case, they just fall into place, later, like having a stability and security, it's true. I did travel quite a lot, I spent many years, as a nomad, and I did enjoy it, but you cannot live with the mentality of a nomad, you know, when you are sedentary, you know, because for two reasons, you know, you will become a sad person, you know, and the second reason is that you will not feed. So, yeah, so I suppose, you know, I have to go through the same hurdles, you know, just later, you know, and you guys, you know, can do that journey or moving forward or doing that solo experience, you know, any other time. There is a whole life to complete that, and it's never late, you know.
Dude, I feel as if it's better to
Always,
do it when you're younger because there's less to lose.
Let's
And
keep-
there's less to lose, more to gain.
definitely, you are on your own, you know. And for me now, you know, I have a family, I have a daughter, I have some other responsibilities, you know, that I didn't observe at that time, you know. And obviously, you are more daring, you know, when you are younger, you know, and you get yourself into things, you know, that are memorable, to say the least. You know?
Well, when you said you lived as a nomad, where did you go, and what age bracket of your life was that?
I was living as a nomad in a sense that I was just trying to live for a long period enough in each place, you know, that they will allow me to move to the next one.
Like hand and mouth
So
kind of living.
since I moved to London, you know, after London, it came, you know, Mallorca, you know, in the islands. After that, you know, Canary Islands, you know. Then after that, I moved to Barcelona. So I was always trying to be on the move, you know, and trying to pay attention, you know, to life, you know, and the way that it was going, you know, and in a way trying to interfere the least, you know, with life's plans, you know.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes, you know, the law of the less resistance is the one that allows you to go further, you know, but different for each one.
Yeah. Did you read a lot during it, or did you learn more just by like observing and experiencing?
I suppose, you know, that reading, you know, give you, you know, the tools, you know, and the areas, let's say, you know, of curiosity that then you cover, you know, when you go traveling, you know. So it's a really, really nice deposit to have, you know, before you travel, you know, before you go on a journey, you know. I don't know, you know, I started reading when I was young, you know. It was always something that it subjugated me, you know, and it helped me, you know, I have an amazing faculty to dissociate, you know, and I am very happy doing it, you know. So for me, reading, you know, was a fantastic way of doing it, you know. It takes me to another place, you know, and I like always, all my life, you know, being halfway here, halfway in my work, so to say, you know.
Yeah.
I'm sort of jealous.
It's a word, you know, that I learned how to discover, you know, and I'm happy. In the same way that I like to travel, you know, and go to different places, you know, in different locations in the world. When it comes, you know, to traveling towards the within, you know, I'm also interested, and I have done several journeys, you know, in that regard. So,
Do you meditate?
yeah, through meditation, you know, through the experiences, you know, with different medicines, you know, that I have found, you know, around the world, you know.
Yeah.
It's like for me, it's got the same value that it is give me a ticket, you know, to a train to go somewhere that is fascinating. When something of that, you know, I have the security that is what it is, you know, and I know that it's gonna take me somewhere nice too, you know. I go, you know, and I have been going.
Fuck, man, I wish.
Not regularly, you know, but I have been doing it, you know, and it's interesting because it is an immediate, you know, connection, you know, with that part of the spirituality that we were talking before. You know, it's quite immediate, you know. But you also, with like every journey, you know, you carry to the experience what you have up until that point, you know.
I wish. I've been working full time for 5 years, and like Taylor and I have traveled a bit together.
Not the same.
But it's not the same. Like we went to Japan for a few weeks. We went to Europe for 3 or 4 weeks as well. But I always feel, I just don't know what, I think it'd feel fantastic just to fly, no plan sort of thing, and then just travel for however long and then come back and then start working again or whatever. But I don't have I just can't do it. I don't know why.
Doesn't have the balls.
Don't have not as big as balls as you do.
No, but it has to, coincide, with you have to prepare it in a way. The longest experience, as a nomad that I had, it was just pure nomad, it was 4 months, backpacking in South America. We prepared that well, by working hard, and being focused, in Edinburgh
Yeah.
for about a year,
Mm.
saved quite a lot of money, and then we just took the backpacks, and said, we are going to land in Lima, in Peru, and then we're going to take off 4 months after, from Buenos Aires. And then that was really the experience of being in the journey, not just pretty much, make it happen along the way, and if you want to go to that place, you'll go. If you want to stay a couple of days in that place, you stay, and just kind of go with the flow,
Yeah.
more than ever, and that is something that you have to prepare, unless that you are a free spirit, that cannot be living in a cage, There is a current of people, that are traveling for mostly all their life, they know all the countries, they live as nomads, Not all of us are sedentary, but you only see that when you go out there.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, it's like my dad back in the day. I think he left it a bit late, but it was his mid-20s, and he went on a 2 to 3 year travel binge, I guess. But he went to Nepal, he went to the Middle East, and he met all these people. And even now, like we know, like he met some people from Switzerland, like 40 years ago now, and he still talks to them. He met people from Mexico, still talks to them, and seeing how he has, or where he's gotten to in terms of work and how hard he works, I just can't picture him not caring about that for 2 to 3 years and just letting it all go, I guess. And it makes me think, but I don't know. I don't know why. I don't think I can do it. I don't know.
I think your generation, has been brought up, with a lot of responsibility, So you got a lot of responsibility upon your shoulders, And I have witnessed here, that from very early age, the goal is to find a job, to find your independence, But that comes at a cost, Obviously, those years go by. Then you meet somebody, you establish yourself, and then those opportunities don't disappear, But let's say that you are running very fast, towards being established, Being established means a lot of good things, but it also means, some other things that are very restrictive and not as good.
It's the Greek mother with the iron fist ruling upon me.
Did you ever get backlash from family, David?
You mean if I miss them, and that is a hurdle, or sorry, what is that?
Like you didn't go to uni, get a job, start like staying somewhere still.
Like you took an alternate type of path. Like you didn't
Get
do what
backlash.
everyone does. You just went and traveled. Did anyone in your family have any like concerns or tell you about like they didn't really think you're doing the right thing or?
Yeah, definitely. For many years, I was the one that they was doing the things, the ways that were not supposed to be, So I was like a salmon swimming against the current, But at the time, it felt, like the right thing to do, And along the way, I discovered myself doing, I don't know, dozens, of different jobs, throughout my life, that each one of them, has given me something, So I suppose, like I said before, I end up, in the same place, being established, but in a different order, I didn't do it in the Orthodox order, I studied, when I was older, I took those degrees and those decisions, when I was older, and I was very much accompanied, by fortune, and the way that life was going,
Yeah.
So
Very interesting. Well, what would you say the best country or experience you've had was?
in terms, of the most beautiful experience as complete, as in South America, as the whole trip, was amazing. Just for the simple fact that I like that moment, in which you sit down in the square, and you talk to the local, and you share, that little piece of reality, at that time, and I just had 600 million people to talk to, all of a sudden in Spain, we only had to speak Spanish, so over there was fantastic to be able to speak with anybody, regardless how big or small it was the village that you were in, and that
Did
opens
you
doors.
did you try any of their medicines?
Yeah, did you do ayahuasca? I was gonna ask.
I had the opportunity to do ayahuasca in Isla del Sol, in Bolivia, in Peru. In Bolivia. It was in Titicaca, so it's between both countries, in Titicaca Lake. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah.
No, because at the time, the guy that was offering it to me belonged to the Santo Daime, which is one of the religions, in Brazil, that use it. It's kind of like a syncretic religion that mixes all practices, from the jungle, with Catholicism.
Yeah.
They sing a lot, and it didn't kind of resonate, with what I wanted from the experience. I didn't do it. That I tried it after, when I was more established,
And how was that?
I tried other medicines before that. It was interesting. It was something completely different, to any other thing that you can imagine. It's in a way like, I think the best description, is like if you could be conscious, during your dreams, and interact, and do things, But all
Jesus,
that,
that
is about,
sounds dangerous.
in a way, connecting, with a deeper part of yourself, and you need to be ready. And it's not something that it has to resonate or go with everybody. And it certainly, can be dangerous for people, that have a predisposition, to have mental disorders. It's not something that I would recommend in the same way that I would not recommend any religion. But for me, it was an experience, that I think it has helped me to understand myself a little bit better, and also help me understand, that at the end of the day, in terms of existence, we are not that different from each other, and it helped me to see that connection, a lot better. That old saying, that says that the only thing that we take with us, at the end of our life is whatever we have given, and it really makes you connect, with your existence with the existence of the other, and that is something beautiful, because we tend to live our life, very much focused on ourselves, most of the time.
I've heard that a lot. It brings people closer. It makes you.
We're going to South America next, Tay.
Hopefully, let's go. When
That's
you're
the thing now, as soon as they open the borders, guys, go,
I've got 6-7 weeks of leave, so I'm ready whenever they open up.
yeah,
that's a good thing, that many people accumulating leave, they're gonna go for a long time after.
That was going to be my next question. What would your advice be for? He works full time, Costin. I start work in February. I told you that last time. What would your advice be now? Because my plan was to go and travel till February, but things change, obviously.
At the moment, it's hard to say, because
That's what I mean.
it will require a lot more bureaucracy, and there are countries, that have different legislation, in terms of letting people in or not. But I keep connected, through podcasts, and books, with that current, of people that are still traveling. I'm still quite interested, and it's something that I miss. So
Yeah.
I know that there are still people traveling, there are still people going to Africa, still people going to different places. It's just more difficult, it's probably more expensive, but people is going, So I suppose, now is another curtain of fear, that we have to go through, this COVID situation, I think definitely has left a footprint, of fear, in our society,
100%.
and now traveling, it will take another dimension, in my opinion.
I don't know. It's hard because I feel like these are my golden years, and they're being taken, which I know
mate,
a lot of people feeling.
You're 22 and bald. Come on, they're not golden.
You can't shit bald people. David, come back me up,
Hey,
man.
there's a full head of hair here.
The golden years, bro.
I used to have one too,
Yeah, same, right?
At your age, my head, was next to my belly, the leg.
Why are you shitting for, man? Why are you shitting on me?
I went, from being long hair to no hair at all, So it was quite shocking for my daughter the first day.
Thank God I can grow a beard at least. That's the only thing I got.
Yeah, that's right. It's the other way around. Now the hair has dropped.
What can you do? What can you do? I don't know. Nothing.
It's only her,
Yeah. That took a while for me to accept that, but still,
It did.
yeah, I don't know. Well, your advice is, so do you reckon everyone should just travel? Like every person, they need that experience? Like you're saying the
No,
ayahuasca
but
thing you wouldn't recommend to everyone. What about just the
no,
experience of traveling?
depends. There are many different ways, of going to places. There is I believe that there is certain people, that they deep inside, have that need, and when they find that time, to listen to themselves, they hear it. Those are the ones that they should go, because definitely there should be an adventure, for them waiting, and not everybody, is happy doing the same thing,
Yeah.
So it's hard to recommend, the same thing for everybody, the same that we were talking about as with religion, with medicine, or any other thing, But it definitely, if you hear that voice, I recommend to listen to that voice. It's usually more important than the voices that come from outside,
Fuck, that's deep.
I hear that voice.
That's deep.
I
Do you
hear that
think,
voice.
do you think people hear that voice in themselves and never follow it throughout their whole life? Or do you think everyone will follow it eventually?
No, I think we all listen to that voice sometimes, and sometimes we do the opposite, and we all make mistakes, But I think, that in that something, that to the medicine, kind of came as a certainty, that everybody has that. Everybody has access to that, Like in a way, and if you want to go very deep, everybody's got access to God, but they need to find that God within, and very deep inside, and that requires a lot of questions, and a lot of decisions, and a lot of movement, that for some people, means going to the Himalayas. For some other people, means going to work with a community in the outback. That concept of journey, that concept of set free, that concept of breaking, the chains, that tied you up, you don't need to go far to do it. You just need to make you are one decision away from it. And certainly the first step, won't take you there, but at least will take you out from where you are if you are not happy.
It's getting me excited, this.
One decision away to be free. Very interesting.
I think about it all the time, to be honest. I've never acted on it. I think about doing it all the time, like just
same.
going somewhere. Never acted on it. Like my dad was one of the guys that went to the Himalayas, right? I really want to go somewhere like that, Middle East, somewhere that's not
mainstream traveler.
Not mainstream, but you get experiences out of it that you not get from anywhere else. But obviously now you can't because of COVID. But even without COVID, I don't think I'd be able to. But I really, really want to at least go on my own for a couple months. But
I think that it's an important decision, and it's a hard one to make. But one thing that I discovered when you travel by yourself, and I did that a few times, I went around Europe, just buying a train ticket, that allows you to go to different zones, and I traveled by myself for a month, and it was boring, very little times of the trip, Most of the time I was meeting people along the journey, and finding myself in situations, sleeping in the square in Napoli or I don't know, having a party, in Sicily,
Yeah, see, that's mad.
So that allows you, to not have to be dependent, of the person that you go with, and be free, So to do that, you don't need to go far. You just need to make that decision of I'm gonna go on my own. Let's see what I find about myself, with this time that I have to listen to.
Well, that's the hardest thing to do. The decision's the hardest thing to do, and then trying to deal with yourself and find yourself is even harder. Well, I think
it is hard. It is hard, and that's why I see many people choose to avoid it, and like just live in distraction, and that is fine, Why not,
Yeah, good money, good job, but security. I don't know.
I don't know either. Fuck.
At the end of the day, that's the thing, that we don't know, And I believe, that at the end of the day, the most important part is the journey. And
Mm.
just like I said before, just try to find what you are useful for, towards others, and then try to do it, and that is probably the best way of channeling a life, that it fulfills you, and give you some sense, It's at the end of the day what we all are seeking, some sense,
Yeah.
sense of why are we here, and what is our mission,
Fucking hell.
I know whenever I talk to you, David, I always feel a bit uneasy, but I like that because the uneasiness is like, I got to do something. You know what I mean? I don't
Yeah,
know.
like I said, the ones that are listening to that voice, they should go, but at the end of the day, I'm only a simple man, with a simple life, and I'm just saying, what it was my journey, and what I think I have learned, but I don't know how it would have been, it's been put in different orders,
Mm.
In a way, it would have been fantastic to know that I want to be a novelist, or I want to be a philosopher, or I want to be an astronaut, or I want to sweep the streets, and have a conviction, and that lack of conviction, makes me be errant, and go around different places,
Yeah.
and it took me some helpful places, and it took me some few really good ones, that they changed my life, And sometimes what I learned is that something that it seems minuscule, that it seems meaningless, it could be the turning point of your life,
But
And,
do you only see that through hindsight?
sorry?
Do you only realize that that was a turning point through looking back on it in the past, like hindsight?
No, sometimes it's a bit more immediate than that, I'll share a story, it might seem quirky, to some people, but when I was doing the Camino, at that point of my life, I was really feeling overwhelmed, and I was a bit lost, and I was coming out of a relationship, that was a bit toxic, and after that came, a very extenuous job, working at that time, it was with an orchestra, that was going to many different places in summer, so we have like 50 gigs in a row, sleeping in the truck, and I think my stress, went over the roof,
Yeah.
and it got to one point, that I was going to explode, and I was very often in a bad mood, and that's when I decided to do the Camino. So at that
Yeah.
point, what I wanted with the Camino is just pretty much just put my backpack, and knowing that the only thing that I will have to do, is step
Just walk.
again, forward, and keep moving, and there was no other obligations for at least a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And that kind of let me, empty up, It's amazing when you have that time ahead of you and you spend that time with yourself, not talking too much to other people because you decide whether you stop or not. And the first days, I walked by myself quite a lot, and I could notice, how all that anxiety, all the heaviness, of life, was kind of dropping, And there was a particular moment, in which walking by myself, in the mountains, where I come from in Leon, it's quite beautiful. Misty day, it's quite a nice atmosphere, And I
Yeah.
remember I was walking, by myself. There was no one else, and I could see, between the mist, a figure, that he was standing, of a sheep, looking at me, and not moving. Usually it's strange because they jump away. As I was approaching, I could see that the sheep was bleeding. So the whole belly, was kind of there, and she was standing still, looking at me, and bleeding, And at that moment, I didn't know what to do because I was by myself in the middle of nowhere, and I was thinking, well, it must be attacked by a wolf
Yeah.
or by a dog or whatever, But I could not see the shepherd anywhere else, The herd was not around. So I kind of have a point, in which what do I do, because I was in the middle of two villages and I have 4 kilometers behind me, and another 5 and nothing, just the road in the meantime, in the middle. So I remember for whatever reason I could not continue, and just do nothing. So I
Yeah.
ran back to the village, and I managed, to get somebody in one of the bars, knew somebody, that knew the herd, and they quickly jumped on the bike. They went with the van, And by the time I reached the same point, I could see the sheep, looking at me for the last time
Yeah.
and being taken. I don't know whether they survived or not or whatever, but they took it with the van, And at that point, it's like I felt, moved, very moved, and like with a deep feeling, wanting to cry, and feeling really emotional, and I didn't know exactly why, Could be, because I was overwhelmed before,
Mm.
and I needed to let that out. I don't know what it was, but I continued walking, and because I was overwhelmed in the next village, I thought I wasn't going to stop, but I thought I'll stop there. There was an albergue, which is the places that you stop to sleep along the way. This time just to go in there, have a cup of coffee, which you can do too along the way. And it was at that particular moment when I came in and I had that cup of coffee that I met my wife.
Mm.
So
You think
meeting
things
my wife
happen
at that
for a
point,
reason?
makes me have a drive in my life, which for many years I didn't know what I want to be, but I had the certainty I want to be with my wife, So that is what it made me go into that journey, And that's why I said that I don't know what it was happening with something that it looks insignificant, like stopping because there was
A shape.
a ship, in the middle of the road, But for me, stopping there, makes move everything, so I could stop right at the same time, in that moment, in which I met my wife for the first time, So
Wow.
sometimes are things that you look back and then you put into place, but they change your life immediately, You just
That's
don't know it.
interesting. See, I was gonna say, are you vegetarian or something? Like,
Nope.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Why do you care then if you're not vegetarian? But that's interesting.
No, I was gonna say next time you have a family function with David, please invite me over.
Yeah, David's good for a chat. That's why he's on.
I don't know. At the moment, it felt like something really symbolic, And throughout the time, it's one of those places that I go, because I see the dimension that had, because it's like the butterfly effect, that unchanged, the events, that it came after, If I would not have stopped, if I would just be thinking about myself, at that time, if I would not have been able, to do anything, and just continue,
You
it
wouldn't
may
have.
have been a very different journey,
Yeah,
So
and you've
that
carried
was,
that throughout your life, though. You've carried that selflessness almost, which is interesting.
I
Because
don't know,
people usually don't.
selflessness is what I would like to try to achieve, but it's quite a long journey,
Yeah, fair enough.
The journey's the best bit.
Shall we wrap?
Yeah, that's it. It's like when you go to Ithaca, it doesn't matter, how far it is, it's the journey up to Ithaca, that it counts,
Yeah.
He knows.
I know.
Anyway,
But yeah, no, I think that's a good spot
that's a
to
good
wrap it
spot
up.
to end. Thanks for that, David.
I appreciate it, David. Thank you very much for that.
Whenever I talk
You're
to you,
very
man, I
welcome,
got a
guys,
lot of shit to think about.
Yeah, you're making me want
happy,
to.
I hope that this run, is useful for anyone, Thank you for calling me out, guys. I've been listening to some of the work that you have done before, and I really like it. I think that you are doing a really great job. Keep it up, and thank you very much for
Oh, we appreciate it.
Thanks, David. A real listener.
No, you've actually made me question a few things. So
That's what David does, mate.
yeah, I know it's uncanny.
always happy, to make people question.
Thanks, David.
Thank you very much, mate.
No worries.
Appreciate
Good
it.
Thank you,
night.
guys.
Appreciate it. Thank you. I'll see you soon.
See
See
you
you.
soon.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.